All right, guys, we are back for our final segment of the show, and we are going to be talking about 5 playoff teams from a year ago that will miss the playoffs this coming season. And obviously, the first team that I want to talk about is the team that I know you guys love hearing me talk about over and over on this show, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, I think they will miss the playoffs this year. And I know, obviously, I'm wearing my Steelers shirt here for just that special occasion because I just want to dog out my team a little bit more. Um, so, as a Steeler fan, you tend to be their harshest critic, as opposed to all the people in the national media who love Mike Tomlin and want to see him be the head coach for the Steelers for decades to come. But that is not what most Steeler fans want. And going on to the Steelers, just why I think they will miss the playoffs is simply because they don't know what they're doing at quarterback. They're most likely going to probably roll with Mason Rudolph, which I agree with. I'd much rather have Mason Rudolph as the QB1 and then rather than having 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. We've been over this. You guys know at this point my stance on Aaron Rodgers. Don't want him here. I don't care how, productive he might be. I don't care if he'll be a better quarterback than Russell Wilson. I do not want him here because if he wants to be a Steeler, he would have been a Steeler already. Make up your mind at this point. That's kind of where I'm at with Aaron Rodgers. But, I just think the Steelers have just not done enough in free agency. They've had a lot of cap space going into this. And, of course, they made the big move by getting DK Metcalf, which is great. I love that move if you have an idea of what you're going to do at quarterback. The Steelers do not have that. They have not had that, and they have not had that plan ever since a couple years before Ben Roethlisberger was going to retire. That's when they should have started really looking into drafting his replacement. One of the biggest things that I always go back to is the 2020 draft when they decided to draft Chase Claypool, who, by the way, is no longer in the league anymore. They had a second-round pick. They drafted Chase Claypool, and they could have drafted Jalen Hurts that draft. But the reason they didn't is because Ben Roethlisberger was still on the staff, and he would have been annoyed if the Steelers drafted a quarterback because he would have felt threatened, even though they were never going to start, any quarterback over Ben Roethlisberger until he retired. They're just not going to do that to him. But, Ben kind of let his pride get in the way. He kind of was that way when they drafted Mason Rudolph several years ago. He didn't really like that, and that's why he didn't necessarily have a great relationship with Mason Rudolph. Because he looked at him as a threat, even though he never really was. But lo and behold, Mason Rudolph could absolutely end up being the number one quarterback this year for the Steelers. And I just don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think there's enough there. The defense, I think, is as great as as far as individual performances that they have on that defense with guys like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, Patrick Queen. All those guys are all pro dudes. But I just don't trust the coaching, defensively, schematically, I just don't like how they do. They keep TJ Watt on one side of the line, don't even try and move him around when he's getting triple teamed and chipped every single play. They just keep running the same type of defense, same zone defense that never works, and they keep running it out every single year. So I just don't trust the coaching, but I won't rant too much about the Steelers because there's 4 other teams on this list that I'm going to dog out a little bit too. So I just wanted to save that special segment for the Steelers there just to start everything off and get it all out in the open so you guys don't have to hear me talk about the Steelers and how bad I think they are this year. So moving on, I also think the Houston Texans will miss the playoffs this year. Kind of talked a little bit about that when we talked about the Colts a couple segments ago. I just think the Texans have let go of a lot of, or at least one main player that really I think is a head scratcher, and that's the Laramie Tunsil trade. Their offensive line was, iffy at best last year anyway, and he was the best part of that line. And then now they get rid of him, and now now they have to fill a hole, with a guy that you don't know if you're going to draft him, you don't know if he's going to end up being as quality of a tackle as Tunsil is. You take that risk by getting rid of him, and you need as much offensive line help as you can possibly get. Now, maybe there was something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about as far as why they traded him, because they traded him for, essentially nothing. I think it was a 4th or 5th round pick they traded him for. That's nothing for a guy like Laramie Tunsil. He's a Pro Bowler. So I don't get that. I don't get why they did that, but, that's another move that's kind of a head scratcher. I know we've mentioned that before, but I think the Texans, they showed a lot last year on the negative side. I feel like they took a big step back last year from what they were when C.J. Stroud was a rookie and when, D'Amico Ryans was a rookie head coach. That first year when they were all together with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, none of those guys were hurt. They were all healthy. That was a solid team. Their offense was clicking. They were lightning in a bottle, basically. And then they ended up just being that, just lightning in a bottle, because they didn't sustain it in the next year. They got to the playoffs and got to the divisional round after they picked up a wild card win over the Chargers. But, I don't see them doing that again this year. I think they're going to take another step back, and maybe the Colts overtake them in that division. The division is not a great division, so whoever wins it, I don't think is going to have much more than 10 wins, if they even have 10 wins. It's just not a very good division overall. Like I said earlier, half of the teams in that division pick in the top 5 of the draft just about every year. So that's not a quality division. So it just kind of depends on how it all shakes out. But I have the Texans missing the playoffs next year. Moving on to the next team I have, and this might surprise some people, but I have the Chargers as a team that made it, that will probably, or at least has a possibility of missing it this coming season. I know that they picked up Najee Harris to help with their run game and everything, but I also think that division has gotten a lot better. The Broncos are getting better and better, and I feel like they're going to be challenging the Chiefs more so than the Chargers in terms of the division. The Chiefs have shown cracks over the years. I think that Super Bowl loss to the Philadelphia Eagles showed a lot of flaws of what this team has, and they need to improve in a lot of areas because they were just manhandled in that Super Bowl. And there were too many games last year where, given their pedigree and their record and all that, you would think that they should be able to easily take care of some of these teams. Like the Panthers took them all the way to the end, and the Panthers were, one of the teams that are picking in the top part of the draft because they were bad last year record-wise. They got a little better as the season went on after Bryce Young came back in after being benched. But, they took the Chiefs to the very end, and the Chiefs had a lot of other games that were just kind of iffy because they would win on a controversial call, or they would win just based on a field goal at the end of the game. They weren't sharp for most of the season, and it really, really reared its ugly head once they got to the Super Bowl, and they played a team that was just flat out better than they were, and they just got absolutely out-physicaled. They got outplayed, outclassed in that Super Bowl, and I think that raised a lot of alarm bells in Chiefs Kingdom after that game. So, the Chargers, I think, can miss the playoffs next year just because that division, like I said, is getting better. Because not only, of course, the Chiefs will still be there, they'll still probably win the division, but like I said, the Broncos are going to be good next year, and even the Raiders are getting better. And I don't think 3 teams get out of the division to get into the playoffs next year. I don't think that's going to happen in a lot of teams, or I don't think that may not even happen at all. Maybe the NFC North gets 3 teams just because that division is very, very good. But I don't see any other division getting more than, or getting 3 teams in the division or in the playoffs from the division. So I think it's going to be the Chiefs and Broncos in that division in terms of who goes to the playoffs. So that leaves the Chargers on the outside looking in. I just think the Broncos have made better moves overall, and the Chargers, I can't have a hard time trusting the Chargers. I know they have Jim Harbaugh now, so it's, different, I guess. But they've had many of other different coaches that, are, usually good coaches. And, one of the big ones that comes to mind was way back in the day with Marty Schottenheimer. He won 14 games and they fired him in the offseason. So it's just, the Chargers are just one of those teams that are like, oh yeah, these guys have got a lot of talent, but they can never really get past, where they need to. They can never really get over the hump or really play to their true potential. And I think that's going to be another situation that we see this coming season. I got the Chargers out of the playoffs here. So moving on to the next one, and this next one is kind of division-based, because just because I have this team not making the playoffs next year does not mean that I think this team is a bad team or that they'll take a step back or anything like that. But I've got the Green Bay Packers missing the playoffs simply because somebody in that division has to miss the playoffs. They're not getting all 4 teams in that division. And I think the Vikings still have quality around J.J. McCarthy. I mean, we don't know what we're going to get out of him, but that team is loaded with talent. So he just needs to be decent, and they'll be in the playoffs, I think. The Lions, obviously, are still very good. They need to shore up their defense a little bit, but their offense is still very good. It will be interesting for the Lions to see them come out next year with 2 brand new coordinators. We'll see if they can keep that offensive firepower. You know, they still got the players, so we'll see, because a lot of the schemes that the offense was running was a good reason why the Lions were as good as they were. So we'll see as far as that is concerned, but I have the Packers going, you know, like I said, I mean, it's hard to even really say it because I like some of the things that they've done in the offseason this year. Like getting Nate Hobbs from the Raiders, I think it's a good move for their secondary. You know, I just think that the Bears have made too many better moves, and I think the Bears are going to be that other team that gets into the playoffs in that division. It'll be the Lions, the Vikings, and the Bears. Maybe it'll be in different order. Maybe it'll be the Lions, Bears, Vikings. You know, who knows? That division was very good last year and had 2 14-win teams in it. So, you know, who knows? It's a very, very good division. We'll see what happens with that. But the last team that I have on my list, last team of this show here, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that is kind of covered a little bit in what I talked about with the Falcons a few segments ago. The Buccaneers, I think, are decent. But I think the Falcons will be better next year. I don't think the Panthers or Saints are going to be a threat. But I think the Falcons will be better, and this is another division that I don't think gets more than 1 team in it, you know, in the playoffs. So the Falcons were, like I said, winning that division for most of the year last year before the Buccaneers turned it on and the Falcons faded, you know, as they were struggling with Kirk Cousins before they ultimately moved to Michael Penix. But the Buccaneers, I feel like it's going to be one of those years that they're going to be scrappy because they always are. As long as they have Baker Mayfield, they'll be scrappy, and their offense will be decent. But I think they'll miss the playoffs simply because I don't think more than 1 team gets into the playoffs from that division. Just the way I think it'll go. That's just kind of the way it always is with that division. It's always the division winner that makes the playoffs, and then everybody else misses the playoffs. That's just kind of the way it goes in that division. And I think it'll be another similar case with this coming season. So, yeah, so that is actually it. That's all for this show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed going through all the season outlooks with you guys, and then, of course, diving into some of these playoff teams and all that. That was pretty interesting to get into that. So I appreciate you guys all listening. And, of course, we'll be back again with a show tomorrow. And hope you guys stay tuned for that as well. But again, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast. We are all, of course, we are always presented by the GSMC Sports Network. So you would think that I could get this right, even though I've got it written down right in front of me, but I still flub the lines. But anyway, your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on all the social medias. You know, you guys all know them by now. Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, Instagram, for more content and updates. Thank you guys once again, and have a wonderful night, and I will see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to